All right, we'll try this once again. Hopefully this is working. Go back to Micah, the 3rd chapter. Because here we see those who were supposed to have or supposed to be engaged in injustice simply were not doing that. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's messed up. Okay. Hopefully brothers can see it. Brothers and sisters can see it now. I guess somebody watching. Let me know if you can see the stream, because from my end it's saying something different. But nevertheless, I'm in Micah, the 3rd chapter. And okay, peace. Thank you. Peace to you. Thank you. Okay. I'm in Micah, the 3rd chapter. I guess I'll start from there. What was the last thing y'all heard? Could somebody tell me? Maybe. Was I in Micah? Or I don't know. Okay. Okay. Well, I thank you. I'll start here. So I appreciate you. So Micah, the 3rd chapter, in verse 9, it said, "Hear this, I pray you, ye heads of the house of Jacob and princes of the house of Israel, that abhor judgment, those that hate justice and pervert all equity. They build up Zion with blood and Jerusalem with iniquity." Then he tells you what they're doing. He said, "The heads thereof judge for reward, and the priests thereof teach for hire, and the prophets thereof divine for money." Right? So there's no justice there. How could there be justice? And those who are in charge, those are the heads, they are supporting falsehood, they're supporting lies, they're supporting iniquity. And then had a nerve to say, "Is not the Lord among us, none evil can come upon us," right? You hear it in the churches today, in the Christian churches, right? Is not the Lord in this place? How could he be? Right? But then again, when you look at the political leadership, right? God bless you and God bless the United States of America. Wait a minute. Whoa. But it's built on lies, though. It's built on injustice. When you hear that in the Pledge of Allegiance, that justice for all, that's a lie. So that therefore shall Zion for your sake be plowed as a field. Why? Because the leadership. He says, "And Jerusalem shall become heaps, and the mountain of the house as the high places of the forest." See, when the people in charge get off into this kind of corruption, everything's going to go corrupt. Everything's going to be destroyed. That's what people need to take heed to. When you look at the political situation right now in this country, you should understand it can't help but go awry, because it's built on lies. It's only so far you can get with the injustice that you see, with the lack of justice, with the lack of equity, with the lack of ethics, with the lack of morality. But now let's go to Matthew, the 7th chapter. And again, in understanding judgment, because again, judgment in the scriptures can be, judgment in the Bible can be referring to straight justice, right? It can be referring to how one looks at a matter and the judges it according to the law of God and compares it to, and then you got straight up condemnation or a judgment, right, for an action. These are all different things. But now we in Matthew, the 7th chapter, and verse 1, because this is something that people will say they know this verse and don't know another verse. They know Jesus wept. They might so for God so little world, but they know this. They know this one. Judge not that you be not judged. You tell them, hey, you shouldn't deal in homosexuality. Judge not that you be not judged. Don't your Bible tell you that? Well, yeah, but if you read it in context, we can find out what he's talking about. So this is Matthew, the 7th chapter, verse 1. It said, "Judge not that ye be not judged." We can't stop there, though. Let's keep reading. Verse 2. It says, "For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. With what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again." In other words, don't deal in unrighteous judgment. Don't be a hypocrite, right? So just how you judging people, you should understand that the Lord's looking at it. He's going to judge you the same way. The same way. Like a lot of times we want to come down on somebody, have no mercy, right? Well, then hold on, because you in error too. And that's what he's talking about. Especially in this case, you got a lot of cases where you coming down, you bringing forth judgment on people, And it's not just, it's unjust criticism because you are not in the moral position to say anything. I remember, I believe it was it Wallace from CBS? He was interviewing Minister Farrakhan. This was years ago. And he talked about, I believe it was an African country. I believe it was Nigeria. He talked about how Wallace was saying in the interview how Nigeria was, you know, this country, I believe it was Nigeria. This country is corrupt. It's full of scam artists. It's one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And Minister Farrakhan he told him a new one. Why? Because he said the United States is in no moral position to talk about anything that anybody else is doing. You shed blood all over the world. How are you going to make a moral declaration about a country? You're not in a moral position to do it. And that's how a lot of people are. You saying something about somebody, but you're not in a moral position to really say anything. You're not in a moral position to really say anything. Okay, so I'm going to pick it up at verse 3. It says, and why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Like a mote is like, imagine like a tooth or a splinter or something in somebody's eye, right? There's something in the area, but it's small, right? And you coming down on them, but you got a beam in your eye though, right? That's what he's saying. So he's talking about hypocrisy. That's hypocrisy, brothers and sisters. He says, or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye? How in the world you going to talk about this one when you got a splinter or you know, a speck in his eye when you got a beam in your eye? And that's a lot of times, even children, you'll try to correct children. They're not trying to hear you. You know why? Because children smell hypocrisy like hound dogs. How you gonna tell me not to have you think about it, young lady, she a teenager, and you say you better not have no boyfriend. She thinking that here you be sneaking men and women out this house. Men out this house all the time, thinking I'm asleep. You a hypocrite, right? So he said, thou hypocrite. First cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. How you gonna help your brother and talk about what he needs to do when you look at what you're doing? And he said, in this case, it's worse. Let's go to 1 Corinthians, the 2nd chapter, because some would say, hey, you can't judge. You can't judge if you're telling something. Because see, now we want to talk about you can judge. You can say something that's wrong according to Scripture. This is 1 Corinthians, the 2nd chapter and verse 15. Paul writes, but he that is spiritual judgeth all things, yet he himself is judge of no man. So in other words, he's judging all things. Okay, let's go to Proverbs. Because what does he mean? He judging all things. Proverbs, the 28th chapter. Proverbs, the 28th chapter and verse 5. Well, actually, before we go there, let's go to Romans 7. Excuse me, Romans 7 and verse. We're gonna pick it up because what is he judging according to? He said a spiritual man. Well, what makes you spiritual? Let's find out. Romans 7 and 12, it says, Romans 7 and 12, Paul writes, wherefore the law is holy and the commandment holy and just and good. See, so you judging according to that which is holy, to that which is just and good. Okay? That's how you know what's right. And he says something else. He says in verse 14, he said, for we know that the law is spiritual. But he said, but I'm carnal, sold under sin. So he said, in and of yourself, you carnal. But when you dealing in the spirit, you judge and matters according to what that law says. You judging not according to what you think, not according to what you might want to do. You see that too. People have a certain judgment because it's something that they might want to engage in. So they'll go along with something that is wrong. But no, a spiritual man is not doing that. You judging according to the word of God, which is, he shows you an example of this in 1 Corinthians, the 5th chapter. This is what Paul does. He judges. Now, how is it you can't judge? Because people don't know what they're talking about in the sense of judgment. They don't understand what it is. 1 Corinthians, the 5th chapter and verse 1, it says, "It is." Now, he's speaking to the congregation of Corinth, and he says, "It is reported commonly that there is fornication among you." Fornication is illicit sexual behavior. Okay? It's illicit sexual behavior, sexual behavior that's going on between unmarried people having sexual intercourse. So it says, "It is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication as is not so much as named among the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife." Now, wait a minute. So this man is dealing with his stepmother, what we would refer to in today's terms as a stepmother. So it says in verse 2, "And ye are puffed up and have not rather more, that he that hath done this deed might be taken away from among you." So he's saying, listen, you are indifferent as a congregation that's supposed to be holy and sanctified. You indifferent to sin. And when you indifferent to sin, he said, you puffed up, you adulterated. You got too much leaven, right? That's what he's saying. He said, "And ye are puffed up and have not rather mourned, that he that have done this deed might be taken away from among you." At times, there has to be a separation. Why? Because you can't have a whole congregation going after sin. You have to call it out, even if it makes people uncomfortable. That's a judgment. That's judging, brothers and sisters. And he said something in verse 3. He said earlier in 1 Corinthians 2, "A spiritual man judges all things." Him who is a head of a congregation, he says, an apostle, a bishop, he says, "For I barely as absent in body, but present in spirit have judged already." He said, listen, I didn't judge the matter. I'm not there, but I heard what happened and I'm judging. I'm telling you it's wrong. Now, what is he judging according to? Because he says, "For I barely as absent in body, but present in spirit, have judged already, as though I were present concerning him that have so done this deed." What is he judging according to? Let's go to Leviticus, the 18th chapter. Because he said, listen, it's something that's being done. Man, you got people in the congregation. He said, they ain't even too much doing that amongst the Gentiles, that a man would have his father's wife. Let's go to, and he said, "I've judged already." He said, this is sin. We're in Leviticus, the 18th chapter and verse 8. Leviticus, the 18th chapter and verse 8. What does he say? He says, verse 8, he said, "The nakedness of thy father's wife shalt thou not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness." See, you're not supposed to be dealing with her. And he was, now we're going to hold our finger here just to show you something else, just as a side note. Genesis, the 35th chapter. Genesis, the 35th chapter and verse 22. Genesis 35 and verse 22. Because see, it happened even right here. And this was sin. Genesis, the 35th chapter, verse 22, it says, "And it came to pass when Israel," that's Jacob here, "dwelt in that land, that Reuben," Reuben, "went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine." Now, that was his father's wife. Okay? It says, "And Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. So now he lay with his father's wife. That wasn't his natural mother, though. And that's what was going on right here when we read in 1 Corinthians, the 6th chapter. That's what Moses is dealing with in Leviticus, the 17th chapter and verse 8, where he says, "Thou shalt, the nakedness of thy father's wife shalt thou not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness." He's talking about you're not supposed to be dealing with your stepmother. Because in that whole thing, he's talking about close relations. that you shouldn't deal with. So now he knows the law. He's a spiritual man. We know the law is spiritual. So what is he doing? He's judging according to that righteous, spiritual, just, holy law. So again, that's why he can say again in First Corinthians, the 5th chapter, in verse 3, he says, for I prayerly, as absent in body but present in spirit, have judged already as though I were present concerning him that has so done this deed. See, he could judge. Let's go to John, the 8th chapter. Because see, people are dealing in unrighteous judgment. And here we see another example of that. This is John, the 8th chapter. We want to pick it up at verse 1. John, the 8th chapter and verse 1. John 8:1. It says, Jesus went out unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees, now notice these are the religious people, right? They're heads, right? Those that are supposed to know the law, that are supposed to be acquainted with justice. He said, and the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, meaning in the middle, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now they said, we caught her in the very act. Okay, hold your question. I'm going to answer your question in 1 second. It said, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? Okay, so now they call her in the very act of adultery. Then it said this, they said, tempting him that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. So when they continue asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, he that is without sin among you cast the first stone at her. And again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it being convicted by their own conscience. Why? Because they got a beam in their eye. It says, went out one by one. They were convicted in their very conscience. So they were thinking about how they had transgressed the commandment of God. Being at the elders, even unto the last, and Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Women, where are those thine accusers? Have no man condemned thee? That's the judgment, condemnation. So it goes from justice, right, supposed to be put forth, and that's how you're supposed to look at things, to judging a matter according to the law of God, to the judgment or the condemnation that comes for the violation of Torah. So it said, Women, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. He never said, you don't deserve to be condemned or stoned, but how can some unrighteous people bring forth righteous judgment? How can they carry out judgment? That's the problem with the death penalty today. It's not as if people don't deserve to die, but how in the world can an adulterer carry out the execution? How in the world can an idolater, a liar, a homosexual carry out the execution? Not in a moral position to do it. And furthermore, when you look at this case specifically, they were dealing in unrighteous judgment. Not that she didn't need to be, or wasn't deserving to be stoned according to the law, but it said they caught her in the very act. Let's go to Deuteronomy, the 22nd chapter. Deuteronomy, the 22nd chapter. Deuteronomy, the 22nd chapter, and we want to pick it up at verse 22. Deuteronomy 22 and 22. It says, If a man be found lying with a woman married to an husband, then they shall both of them die. Both the man that lay with the woman and the woman, so shalt thou put away evil from Israel. It seems as if you caught her in the very act, you know who the man is. The question is, where was the man? Why you only bring the woman? So we gonna stone her, but where the man at? See, that's saying you can infer, or one can infer, that's why he saw these Negroes, he kept writing in the ground. Why? Because they dealing in unrighteous judgment. So he had to convict their very conscience. Their own conscience convicted them. If they were dealing in righteous judgment, what could be said? What doth the law say? Last place, Proverbs, the 28th chapter. Now we'll go to Proverbs, the 28th chapter, and I'll answer the question in a second. Proverbs, the 28th chapter, we want to pick it up at verse 5. Because we need to understand judgment. It said the evil men understand not judgment. They don't understand justice. He said, but they that seek the Lord understand all things. Why? Because it's shown through the law of God what's right and what's just and how to look at matters. So that's understanding judgment. As the sister asked, but wouldn't that be adultery rather than fornication since it is his father's wife? Okay, so fornication, when you look at fornication, or porneia, as it's called in the Greek, that is referring to illicit sexual behavior in general. Okay, it's a fornication. It's referring to illicit sexual behavior in general. Okay, so that term is used as a general term at times. Okay, so I understand what you're saying. So if you're dealing with a man's wife, you technically did it in adultery. But when you talk about fornication, you talk about sex between just two unmarried people that the woman ain't betrothed. That's fornication. You dealing with adultery. That's under that umbrella. You dealing with homosexuality, people the same gender or sex, dealing in sex. That's all fornication. That's all fornication. That's all fornication. Okay, it's just you dealing with a prostitute, that's fornication, right? You buying it, all those that's all fornication. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, so even if you just look it up, if you just look up the word, just fornication and what it is, it says sexual intercourse between people not married to each other. Okay. Sometimes, you know, it's just in a general sense. Okay. It's consensual sex between unmarried people that are not married to each other. Okay. That's all it means. So that's a whole lot of different types of activities up under that umbrella. Okay. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you there's nothing else. There's no other questions. I want to remind you that we're at the Household of Faith. Meet every Sabbath. All praise to the Most High. We meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel again at 1 p.m. We live stream on our website. Peace and blessings to everybody from the Most High, from everybody that's listening. And what else I want to say? I think that's it, brothers and sisters. I think that's it. If nobody else had any questions, my apologies for the streaming, but I don't know what else to do. It's not my internet. I have a hotspot, have a regular internet. It's not just a brand new computer. It's just my area. So my area is sometimes the internet is not the best for some reason. But if that ever happens, just know that I'm coming back on. If it takes two times, 2 or 3, I'm come back on. Eventually, that lesson gonna come up, gonna be up one way or another. So, again, we appreciate the support. If you would like to support monetarily, you can. You can do that on the website. 100% of the proceeds go to the work of the ministry. Yeah, we're not trying to take your money. We just trying to do the work of the Lord. As far as not saying a man that's preaching the word of God, that's truly preaching the word of God, can't get paid. That ain't what we're saying, but we just don't. Okay. So we just focus on the word, and we thank you for all those who have donated. It's truly, we're a small congregation, so that means a lot to us, and we're truly thankful for it. So, let me ask you this before I get off. Where y'all brothers and sisters, where are y'all located at? I know some of y'all located at, but I think I see a couple names I never seen before. Where y'all located at, if you don't mind? Okay, in Arizona, Colorado, Houston, Texas. I know Sister Ruth in Denver. Okay, so we got 2 people in Houston. And hold on, we got 2 people in Arizona. Sister Amy, are you in Phoenix, Philadelphia? Brother in Texas. Okay. So you got some people that's okay. So you got some people. Okay, so you in Phoenix, and other sisters in Phoenix as well. And 2, that's good to know. That's good to know. I'm gonna actually write that down. Inglewood. Is Inglewood still black? Colorado. So, okay, so brother down here in Colorado Springs. Is Inglewood still for real? I don't think it's Latino, right? Now, is it like Compton now? It won't be soon. Yeah, we get moved all over. Yeah. Okay. So the reason I ask is because we have people. We can start congregations, small congregations, if we have enough people in specific areas. It don't take a whole lot of people. But we can certainly start congregations in places. So, are they building? Yeah, that's not for us. They're building a big stadium, so gentrification is coming. Yeah, when you see a Starbucks, it's over. Yeah, if you see a Starbucks, you time to wrap it up. You see a Starbucks in a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's, yeah, that's not for us. That's not. That's for some other people. You be like, oh, this neighborhood nice. Then you get that tax bill. They building up schools. They doing something else. Yeah, we done. We done. All right, but yeah, that's good because we got some people in some areas. We can again. We should be in a situation soon to do some things. So with that, brothers and sisters, again, you can contact us with questions too. If you got questions through the week or something like that that come on your mind, I try to get to them. Sometimes it's a lot, but I try to get to them. If you ask on online on our website, if you have inquiries or questions, you can type them in there, and I'll try to answer them in the lesson, or I answer them depending on what the question is. I answer them either in the lesson or just type it out the answer. Sister Marion, she does a good job of like alerting me to let me know, hey, brother, you need to look at this. So it's a question in the inquiry. Okay, so with that, brothers and sisters, I'm gonna leave now, and peace to everybody that's listening. And again, it's always my prayer that you will edify. Let me hold on. Let me say that. Hold on before I get off. If it's some again, if you in the areas of feel y'all really serious about getting the place started or a congregation there, let me know. Okay, you can contact me. Hold on. You can contact us via the internet, either our website, israelteach.org, or let's see. And our number here at the Household of Faith is 219-238-7492. Okay. All right. And with that, again, now I'm going. With that, sorry, it's my prayer that you were edified. Peace.